The Talk Station presents Faith Matters, a look at contemporary stories and issues from a faith perspective. While this is a pre-recorded show, we are interested in your ideas, comments, and questions, and we urge you to email them to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life.
And now on the Talk Station, Faith Matters.
And welcome to Faith Matters for this week here on the Talk Station. I'm Ben Ball, and thanks for joining us here on this Sunday morning. And we're joined by Reverend Robert Cornegie, Associate Pastor of Chapel by the Sea in Emerald Isle, and retired Anglican Bishop Doc Loomis. And also we have Reverend Carl Zorowski from St. Peter's United Methodist Church in Morehead City. And good day, gentlemen.
Good day.
Hey, Ben.
Let's get started with an article that actually came from the News and Observer just a week or so ago, and it's about a new book out by former Governor James Martin. And the headline is, "Can you believe in God and evolution? Former Republican NC governor says yes." At a time when many Republicans, from President Donald Trump to conservative churchgoers, are dismissive of science for everything from climate change to evolution, a former GOP governor of North Carolina standing up for science. This article written by Tim Funk. Jim Martin, who was a chemist before he was a politician, argues in a new book that science is nothing short of revelation from God. It goes on to describe former Governor Martin. He was a PhD in chemistry. He taught at Davidson for about a dozen years or so before going into politics, and has taught as a visiting professor, I believe, since then as well. And he is joining a growing group actually of scientists who are saying that there is not a dichotomy between science and faith. And Robert, we've talked about this before. I mean, they said those who claim that science is the answer.
Well, there is the hardcore kind of, I call them the fundamentalist evolutionists. Mm-hmm. That they claim that science actually disproves the existence of God. You don't need a God if you follow material, and you have to. All of this is about definition of terms, quite frankly, and particularly the way this article is written. You have to be so careful with it, because there is a thing called science-ism. Mm-hmm. And science-ism and materialism basically says that there is nothing outside the box of the universe, that there is no supernatural being of any sort. Nothing exists out there. Everything's in the box.
Or causation.
Right. And so everything that exists inside the box of the universe, or we would say the box of creation. And of course we say that no, God exists outside of this box. And then when you talk about, look, I believe in evolution, and I'm a conservative Christian, mm-hmm. and theologically speaking, as well as politically, but the evolution that I believe in is called microevolution, which is actually adaptation, mm-hmm. and that beings adapt to the environment that they're in. And so when Darwin found the beaks changing as the food supply and the rain and all that on the finches on the Galapagos or wherever that was, that these birds were actually evolving, microevolution. They were adapting to their environment. So mm-hmm. I agree with that. What I don't agree with is species evolution. I don't believe that a lizard one day is laying little lizard eggs and all of a sudden a bird comes out from the lizard. And that's a position that has been adopted basically by modern Darwinists, because they can't show the slow progressive. There is no evidence of a slow progressive over time sort of evolution in that sense.
Well, yeah. In this article, it points out that Governor Martin is making the case that actually, if you look at a 4 billion year old Earth, that it's too young to have had all of the things happen. that evolution would require it to have.
Based on the Darwinism,
Yeah,
the
based on
Darwin
that
theory.
idea.
That's why Stephen Jay Gould, who was one of the leading apologists for evolution, came up with the idea of, he called it punctuated equilibrium, where he said all of a sudden a lizard laid a bird. And it just happened all at once. It was evolutionary force.
But I think the thrust of this article, Carl, is that it's a Republican saying these things, and then, frankly, that's what the end of notes, I think, angle is.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you that this is just a shock. It's just a shock that a Republican would support any type of scientific view. Now, we just finished going through the story of creation in a Bible study we're doing on Genesis at our church. And, if you look at the story there, you really have two different creation stories in the first two chapters of the Scriptures. And if you try to make the two line up, they don't work. They don't work with each other. And the problem I think people run into is trying to read this creation story as a scientific explanation of how things came to be. And that's not what it was written for. It was written to be a theological explanation of the origin of things. What do the two creation accounts tell us? God created everything. That's it. Now, I've told people, if you like to believe in this 6-day creation and 1 day of rest, if that works, that's great. That works great for me. I love that story. But when I get to heaven one day, if I come to God and I say, so tell me, was it 6 days? And God says, well, it was, that Darwin fellow, he figured it out. But I'm the one that made it work. And that's what it is. God is the source of everything.
As I said to my church, if I get to heaven and he says, it really was 6 days. The seventh was 23 hours because of daylight savings time.
Yeah.
But it's a.
So God created that too. Huh?
Well, yeah. I mean, but I think the story here is not evolution. I think that's the kind of the red flag or the distraction of the headline.
Right.
But the story is, as Jim Martin is putting it out, Doc, is that this is an ordered universe. That God has created things in a magnificent way, in an ordered way that could not just have happened haphazardly.
Yes, he did. I mean, one of the great, I'm trying to remember who did this. One of the great messages I heard was a fellow in our church, actually. There are two of them that have done this message, and it's about looking at the human eye and going through the pieces and parts. I'm sure some of you have heard that same message done. And there's absolutely nothing random about the way that we've been created personally or the way that every little zygote in the ocean has been created. The thing that gets me, but I'm just going to go backwards a little bit and therefore not answer your question completely, Ben, is that it's very frustrating when I see articles in the News and Observer that start with, well, Donald Trump and conservatives don't believe in science. Because, we're going to read this wonderful article about this guy who's well-reasoned, insightful, brilliant man. But the whole point of the article is to demonstrate what a fool Donald Trump and all we other conservatives are.
Exactly what.
But thank goodness this one conservative got it. And it's like saying, well, Donald Trump doesn't believe in petroleum science. He doesn't believe in nuclear energy science. He doesn't believe in medicine. I mean, we all believe that science has a very important role. We all believe that discovery is essential for human existence, longevity, good health. So this whole dismissive attitude that if you're a conservative, you don't believe in science. Yeah. And look, we found the odd duck. Yes. No, you didn't. I'm conservative. I believe in science. Robert's conservative. He believes in evolution. Whatever, Robert. But I'm just saying, we do. On behalf of the conservatives in the room, which I think is all of us, we like science.
Yeah. There's a march for science coming in Carteret County for Earth Day. I think it may be
I hope
happening.
Bill Nye is going to lead it.
Yeah,
well,
I hope so.
Now there's going to be a counter march of seventh graders saying no more math.
I don't believe in that.
And old people are going to be burning their GPSs there. So, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to think that this is some sort of war against science. When in fact what we have is somewhat of the opposite. Is too many scientists that are conducting a war against religion. And here is Jim Martin saying that doesn't need to be.
Well, yeah, and the point he's making is a valid point. I mean, remember the is there music playing?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
Doc still has time.
Oh, he gave he brought
That's
the
right.
candy.
He brought the
didn't
candy, so he gets
That's
the
right.
clothes.
All right. Well, I'll concede.
Okay.
I'll give him about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But the he's making that point that materialism basically says you don't need God in this process.
Right.
And he's saying this is not true, that God is a part of the process. Now, there's a lot of debate about that, how far that goes in that. But I think the point being, this is a huge contention on campuses. This is really where a lot of them go. And so, if you're going to get into any kind of teen or college ministry, you better be able to answer some of these questions, because these are the ones that they're going to bring up regularly.
Yes, and they are. And I think we had a guest on our radio show this morning, on this Tuesday that we're recording, that was talking about how 25% of your college campus professors will be atheists or agnostic, and I think that's probably a low number.
Yeah.
But that we have to be concerned about that, right, Doc? And that we should be.
It's true. The scientists should love us. We are not haters of science. We are haters of bad science. And so we are their best friends because we keep science pure. Thank you, conservatives.
Well, more to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the talk station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And welcome back to Faith Matters here on the talk station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And good that you could be with us here this morning. And I'm joined, as always, by Reverend Robert Cornegy, Reverend Carl Zorowski, and also Bishop Doc Loomis joining us today. And our next article that we're going to look at is one that's interesting, coming out of the UK, and involves how people look at the Easter story. And it's from the Telegraph. And it says, the headline is, "You can't be a Christian if you don't believe in the resurrection," says former Queen's chaplain. It's written by Olivia Rudgard. I think it's just a sign of the times that would even be a story. I mean, isn't this kind of we always thought this wasn't optional, and apparently some do?
Well, the reason is because in England right now, a large percentage of its clergy don't believe in the physical resurrection, nor do they believe in the virgin birth. I can't remember what the numbers are, but I want to say it's somewhere between 12 and 22%. I'm talking about clergy now, not Anglican attendees, but of Anglican clergy simply don't believe it. So this is an English response to a uniquely, I don't want to say a uniquely English problem, but something that places like the Daily Mail and the Guardian have been covering in England for, 4 or 5 years now.
Right. I don't believe it's unique to England.
No, it's certainly not. I mean, there's clergy here that don't believe in the bodily resurrection, but this is a uniquely English take. Well, it's from the Telegraph, so
right. Yeah. And so the article begins: "A former chaplain to the Queen has said that the quarter of Christians who say they do not believe in the resurrection cannot be Christians." The Reverend Dr. Garden Ashenden says that in a letter to the Times, that a survey which found that 1 in 4 self-proclaimed Christians do not believe in Jesus' resurrection make the mistake of confusing British culture with Christianity, which is an interesting take on that. He said, "Those people who neither believe in the resurrection nor go anywhere near a church cannot be Christians. As with so many things, the key is in the definition of terms. Discovering the evidence for the resurrection having taken place to be wholly compelling is one of those things that makes you a Christian. Ergo, if you haven't, you are not." I mean, that is based on a survey from the BBC carried out to mark Palm Sunday, found that 23% of those calling themselves Christians do not believe in the resurrection of Jesus from the dead at all. This just is that says would call themselves Christians. I could understand that perhaps from nuns or the agnostic or whatever. But Carl, is this the evidence of just those who are checking off a box to say who they are?
I would say it is. For them, the church has become a club. You get your check, like you said, check off a box. I'm a member of this church. I'm a Christian. Therefore, I'm a good person. We just on Easter Sunday looked at John's Gospel where Mary comes to the tomb, and she keeps asking the question, what have you done with Jesus? Yeah. I look at this article, I say, what has the church done with Jesus? All right. The resurrection is the bedrock of our faith. The church is based on the resurrection of Jesus. So if you don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus, how can you call yourself the church? The article points out that he is a former chaplain to the Queen. Mm-hmm. And the reason he is a former chaplain is because he had to resign after criticizing a church for using the Koran in their worship service. Is the story of Jesus and the resurrection not enough to fill up a worship service that we have to bring in writings of other faiths?
Paradoxically, the Koran denies the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
So,
duh.
So, Doc, again with the Church of England, your connection there, is this something that is a problematic? Do you find in the communion?
Well, it is above the what's that thing that goes around the earth called the equator? Yeah, the northern hemisphere, it's a real big issue. Canada, the United States, Mexico, certainly England, most of Europe. But once you get down into the southern climes where
the majority of Christians are
where the
now.
majority of new Christians are, because Christianity was a late arriving faith there. And it hasn't been there long enough, and the other perfect storms haven't come, technology and apostasy, that have wiped it out down there yet. Not that it's going to, but it's an ongoing issue in the communion. It is a challenge for all of us in the communion, primarily because this isn't really denying the resurrection. This is denying the authenticity of the Bible. It's basically, and this is, Carl was talking about joining a club, and it is a club that you can pick what you want to believe. You pick and choose what you want to believe in the Bible. I want to believe God is love. I want to believe my sins are forgiven, but it's not really very easy to think of a dead man coming up out of grave, so I just choose not to believe that. And I come from a school of thought that says I don't get the opportunity to pick and choose in the book what I will and will not believe, because that is not authentic Christianity. That's the issue. It's not whether you believe in the resurrection. It's whether you believe in the inerrancy of God's word as it's been canonized in that book. And if you believe in God's word and you believe that that's the authentic truth and word of God, you're good. If you decide you're the arbiter of what's true and what's not, then you've already ignored the basic premise of Christianity, which is that Christ is the truth and that the Word is truth.
Yeah. Now, last week we looked at some churches that were thriving in Europe and some places. But is this a follow on from the history of state churches too? I mean, where you were basically assigned your position in the church, or that you were born into membership? Is this a difficulty? I mean, people may call themselves Anglican or Lutheran or whatever because of their citizenship.
Ben, we never know in these things. When we see polls, and there are very few polling organizations or people making queries of Christians that actually expose the process that they go through to do it. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what they ask these places or what the survey carried out. It says a survey for the BBC carried out to mark Palm Sunday. I don't even know what that means. What did they ask? Did they ask?
You don't get the internals.
Did they ask, is it necessary to believe in the resurrection to be a Christian? Did they say, do you personally believe in the resurrection? Did they say, do you believe in the bodily resurrection? I just don't know.
Right. But one of the things is that if people are checking off the Christian box just because they live in a certain place, that may be one aspect too, which would alter the.
Yeah, and to your point, that's pretty common in Europe. Spent a fair amount of time in Europe, and so people from France and Belgium tend to be Roman Catholic. People from Germany and the Scandinavia tend to be Lutheran. Italians are Roman. There is this cultural identification with a particular denomination that is very powerful. And like you said, in many of these, if your parents register Lutheran when you're born, you receive that Lutheran. In Germany, for instance, you get that put on your birth certificate. So, when they say they think Lutheran Christian, okay, I'm a Christian.
Well,
that is not the case in England, just so you know.
Okay,
since you asked.
But speaking of the British Isles, though,
Well, it may not be the case in Germany now, quite frankly.
Yeah.
That may have been done away
some
with.
Some of that has been relaxed, I think.
Right.
But we look at the Troubles in Northern Ireland. You have Protestant and
Correct.
Catholic. And
That's
it was,
right.
And it was neighborhoods and enclaves, and so I think that kind of points to that. But
Well, and in UK, though, there is also this thing that's going on between Islam and the church. Mm-hmm. And so you distinguish yourself by either being Muslim or Christian, and so you'll kind of do that as well. But I think the point, the primary point is that if you don't, Paul he used some powerful language about this. The Apostle Paul, he said, if the resurrection didn't happen, paraphrasing, then our faith is in vain.
Yeah. Right.
And that we are to be most pitied. This is powerful stuff. I mean, and this wasn't something, just had this discussion a week or so ago with someone that said, that resurrection bit didn't come in until 2 or 3 centuries later. It was not part of the original belief of the church that he resurrected from the dead. I mean, there are people that are saying that out there. And so, whereas, the reality is, Paul said, I'm giving to you what I received. He had a testimony from Peter and John,
right,
who were there.
Yeah.
And saying that from the very beginning.
Well, it's one of the obstacles that you can to battle that for an apologetic is that there were plenty of people who were still alive when this story was being talked about, so they could have refuted it. But now, Carl, I think for a lot of our folks in the pews, one of our concerns about them understanding these events is that my contention is that so much of what adults know about the Bible is from Sunday school lessons, where they may not feel that they're anything more than childish tales, and I think that's a concern.
Correct. And I think as pastors, we have a very, and it's a bad word to use, we have a very grave responsibility to teach the resurrection, that Jesus did rise from the grave, that he does live. If we want to teach people that Jesus was a good person and that they need to be like Jesus so they can be good people, then we're missing the mark as pastors. Okay, Jesus died for our sins. He was raised from the dead. That gives us hope that we are freed from judgment for our sins and we are freed from the fear of death. That's what we need to be teaching. And if we're not doing that, then we're falling down on the job.
And again, not only from this Easter story, but in the weeks to follow,
Right.
they're still very important to be talking about the resurrected Christ.
Right. And do we when we tell the story, do we sense the shock that Mary Magdalene must have felt when she turned around and saw Jesus standing there? Or is it just a story we've heard so many times? We go, oh, yeah, she saw him. It was great. They were reunited. No, it was a shock.
We'll have more to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. Thank you for joining us here this morning. Welcome back to Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And thanks for joining us here today. And I'm Ben Ball, along with Bishop Doc Loomis and Reverend Carl Zorowski and Reverend Robert Cornegie. And as we take a look at another article, this one is interesting and kind of the articles sort of flowing together here in some ways. And this is about a group of Americans that we know precious little about. And I think a group of people of a particular religion that we don't know a lot about either, but we also often mistake them for something else. And this is from an NBC News article called Sikh Americans, and Sikh is S-I-K-H, if you didn't know. Sikh Americans launch ad campaign that looks to push back on hate. And it's an Associated Press article. It says Sikh Americans are launching $1 million awareness campaign as a response to increasing hate violence and a lack of understanding about the religion in the United States. The We Are Sikhs campaign, which began April 14th, is timed with the Sikh New Year of Vaskaki. Is that how you say that? I have no idea. But it is being organized by the nonprofit National Sikh Campaign and is years in the making, funded by Sikh leaders and their families across a dozen cities who have been swept up in anti-Muslim sentiment since September 11, 2001 attacks. Their beards and their turbans, symbols of equality in a religion that opposes India's caste system, made Sikh Americans easy targets for the angry and uninformed. Robert, you have some experience in working in areas with and made friends with among Sikhs before. So, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, they're a fairly new religion. I mean, this says they're the fifth largest. There are others I've read that say fifth to ninth largest. And but anyway, they are. Of course, obviously, it began in India, and in the northern section of India, and Punjabi and all that region, and they follow a guru, and so it's kind of a open door Hindu thing. Although they don't have this whole multi-god, they say in one God,
right?
But they
monotheistic.
Yeah, that's right. But it's they kind of wrap their arms around everybody, so they're very syncretic faith, and so you can. The gentleman I met, we were in London. The Mercy ship that I was on was there for several weeks, and we had tours. And he came through on one of the tours, and I happened to be in the area, and we sat down and started talking. And so we started this 10-year relationship where we would write back and forth. And when we were in Africa, they're very socially active because it's a works-based faith. So they have to do good works. They have to do all this stuff to please the guru. And they have a holy writing book. They have very strict moral laws that they follow. They do not cut their hair, men or women, ever. Once it starts, it never stops.
But also must remain covered, though. So
remain covered. They cover the men wear turbans. The women let theirs, and you'll see Sikh women have hair all the way down their back. It's incredible, and they'll bun it up sometimes. But they're very, very religious in everything they do, and they honor the guru. They honor the book. They have they have temples where they regularly go. They have community meals that they serve. They don't eat meat. Majority of that's either some do, but they have their own way of preparing the meat. So they have dietary, all kinds of different constraints.
And the problems they've run into in the U.S. have been basically people who don't know anything about them, and we know precious little, really. But I mean that they are confused because they wear the turban. Has been largely the
turban
problem.
And the men have
and
beards, big beards.
That they're thought to be Muslim.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're not.
And they're not. And that's the confusion. You know, a lot of people just think they're another iteration of Islam, another spinoff of an Islamic.
Well, that's the biggest part of the challenge that they face is that they're attacked from both sides.
Correct.
Because the Islamic people, the terrorist people, are out to get them. And so here they are for 150 years in our country living normal, peaceful, community-involved lives, and now Americans are out to get them. So they really, if ever a religion needed an advertising campaign. I remember years ago when the Methodists came up with We Are Methodists. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, that's right.
I got two Methodists in the room with me. Yeah, they really needed that because we were all down on them. But it was nice, and we did get to see Methodists.
And most of them shaved their beards.
That's right.
For the TV spot, yes. But, really, if ever a faith needed a moment to say, hey, we're not them. We're not the bad guys. We're you. We're here. We're in your world. And look at these really cool turbans. It's the Sikhs.
They were persecuted by Islam in India.
Exactly.
And that's why many of they call it the diaspora. They left. They fled because of the
Well, and there's been a huge response to the ISIS persecution now. That Bhakti, that's a whole different group. Not a whole different group. It's a whole subgroup of Sikhs who are pushing back against ISIS right now and trying to spread that word.
Yeah, yeah. So they're caught between a rock and a hard place, as they say.
But
Did you say Iraq in a hard place?
no.
Oh, but I will next time.
Okay.
But Carl, this is a uniquely American solution. I think is to take to the advertising world, and that
Yes,
and
yes,
run this.
it is, and I hope that this helps them out. I think I don't think anyone should be persecuted because of their faith, especially if there is a misunderstanding by the ones who are persecuting about that faith. One of the things that I think the United Methodist Church does well is we do respect people of other faiths. We are open to the fact that other people have different beliefs. Do we agree with those beliefs? No. But we respect the fact that they can have them. But I'm hearing all of this, and I heard the comment about, well, there was a campaign from the Methodist Church. We are Methodists. Okay, I don't recall that one. I do recall the open hearts, open minds, and open doors.
That's right.
But I came to the Methodist table a little bit later. But I wonder if maybe we in the Christian church can't learn something from this, because there's so many in our country right now who are down on the Christian church that maybe they don't fully understand who we are and what it is that we stand for.
And which denomination are you going to have create those ads?
Yeah,
The
that's
Methodists.
right.
The
Methodists.
Of
course. The United Methodists.
But really, part of the battle is, and frankly, we can probably find it in our own churches too, are the people who just think anybody who must be from that part of the world, I'm going to point over on radio here, must be Muslim. If they're wearing, frankly, they call them towelheads. If they're wearing a turban, they must be Muslim. I mean, that's sort of the cartoonish thing, though, that we've had. We've had the cartoons that have them portrayed that way, right?
Yeah.
On flying carpets and stuff.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah. Even Disney that way. So I think this is actually, they've done a very, very clever, and also I was reading on their website for this. They have stories of people. One is a postmaster, and you take away the picture, you take away any of the mention of that, and it just sounds like anybody else who became a postmaster, because that's what their family did, and it was a good job to have.
Imagine being in a faith where your basic tenets are equality between men and women, no caste systems, love among the races, community service. I mean, that should fly in America. That's like, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, work hard, advance a big Sikhism. I mean, you would think all America would embrace these people and learn from them, but it's been just the opposite for many Sikhs.
Well, I think, and I may be naive in this, I would think that most Americans would have a sense of these just by their behavior. They're very quiet in the community. They're not aggressive in the community.
They're not evangelistic.
No.
So they stay close within an ethnic group.
And the temple and their scriptures that they have are very important to them. So, yeah, but it's when the worst example. We used to call it the ugly American. And that when that one comes in contact with them and doesn't know the difference, that can get dangerous for them. And they serve in our military. They're really part of the stock, the
Right.
base stock, and so it's.
But it is it's one of the battles that we've had across the United States, across this country, in this great American experiment. And one of the anomalies in the experiment is that when people look different, we have an issue.
Yeah.
We create an issue where there is none.
Right. We can. That's exactly right. And typically, our legal system is set up on behavior, not on appearance. When you say that.
Yeah.
And even not even so much on belief. It's just your behavior. The laws that we have constrain unlawful behavior. And so these people are very law abiding people. So it's not from that they're persecuted. Sadly, it's from their appearance.
And I think part of this is interesting because you would think maybe this is an effort an outreach effort to bring people into their faith, but that's not. No, they're not that way. I mean, I think if you're not born into it, you don't join. So it is just a matter of information. It's a point of information for people.
Yeah.
And it's something that we do need to see. When we have, as you said, these since this country has been settled, basically since their diaspora, they've been here.
Correct.
And so have many other cultures too. But the question is whether or not they assimilate. And these folks assimilate 100% into being American, except for some of the customs that they have.
Correct.
So that's what makes it interesting, is to see this ad campaign, and I hope it does change some hearts and minds. We'll have more to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And welcome back to Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ben Ball, along with Reverend Robert Cornegay, Bishop Doc Loomis, and Reverend Carl Zorowski. And as we into our final segment for this week's show, looking at a story that came out just before Easter, and this was from the Detroit News. And the story is Detroit Church gives free Good Friday gas and oil changes. And it shows also the moniker that they use as a hashtag, a Jesus Weekend, WKND for Jesus Weekend. On Good Friday, Christians across the globe celebrate the crux of their faith, recalling the events that lead to Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. For the 2017 edition, the good news also is pushing Detroit's New Life Family Church to give back. The church's second annual $10,000 gas giveaway provides free gas for Detroiters at a BP gas station, as well as free oil changes at City Oil Change. The gas and oil changes are being distributed on first-come, first-served basis starting at 9 a.m. And the quote is here, our annual $10,000 gas giveaway is just one of the many great things that we are blessed to do. Our ministry is full of young adults who love Detroit and who aren't always willing to do what it takes to love on our own. And emulating our love for Christ, we proudly blame Jesus for doing what we do. But there was another line in here I wanted to find that I was trying to see where it is. It says, we want it's Good Friday, so we want our people to have a Good Friday too. So that kind of got to me. All right, let's start with this marketing campaign. We went from We Are Sikhs marketing campaign to being very concerned. Carl, I don't think you did this for St. Peter's, did you?
No, we did. We did let people know that we were having a sunrise service in Mitchell Village Park, and we had close to 100 people show up. So that was wonderful, and I hope that what we offered them on Easter Sunday gave them a good Sunday. Mm-hmm. But I look at this article and I think, all right, 9 a.m., first come, first serve. At what time did people start lining up? Okay, are people doing that to come to church? No, they're not. They're not. I mean, I think this is wonderful that they're doing things to help people. I'd love to go get a free tank of gas. I'd love to get a free oil change. But somehow this just cheapens the whole Good Friday for me. Maybe I'm being a cynic.
I don't think so. I think you have a good company here.
But I look at this. It says Jesus Weekend. I call it Holy Weekend. Not Jesus Weekend.
Okay, guys. This is a marketing campaign. Robert, would you be lining up in Detroit for free gas on Good Friday?
I think taking the bus is probably a better idea for that day, and I'm just this redefines what Good Friday is all about. I just theologically,
yes.
I'm just sort of struggling with it. I know we all are a little bit with this because this is not really the meaning of Good Friday. I mean, that's the sort of paradox of calling Good Friday Good Friday, because it was a horrible Friday, actually, in terms of from the disciples' point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, as a follower of Jesus, and he's been telling you all along, but it's just been going over your head that one day, this day is going to come. And, 3 years you've been hearing this, and then all of a sudden the day comes. And it was not a good day for them. It was a terrible day. Now, where the Good Friday comes in is that we know that without Good Friday you wouldn't have Resurrection Sunday,
Because we know the story.
And so to help people have a Good Friday is on Good Friday is the best way to celebrate that is to do it in fellowship with believers in the church. And I don't doubt that they did that. This is just an addition to the process. He said we do it like every other church does it, but we do more than that.
The statement from the coordinators was the aim is for the 10-year-old congregation to ensure that at least 500 Detroiters have a Good Friday. And again, no one would object that a church wants to donate that to a community. I mean, that's not the objection, but Doc, about using this free giveaway as a hook for Easter. Is that I just don't quite grab that.
If they were giving the gas away in little plastic Easter eggs and inviting the children to come get it, we'd all think this was the greatest idea in the world, because that's what we all do. Everybody is doing stuff on Easter week.
Not on Good Friday.
No, I totally get
Easter
that.
egg hunts on Good Friday.
You don't do the Easter egg hunts on Good Friday. That's true, but it's just this is conflating some things.
Mm-hmm.
We blame Jesus for doing what we do. Yeah. Really? When did Jesus offer, free oats to all the donkeys? Come by the temple at 3. Jesus will be dishing them out. The disciples did take care of the widows and the orphans and the people in their midst that had not, but it wasn't a marketing thing. Mm-hmm. People noticed, but it wasn't designed to be a marketing thing. It was designed to be the right thing. And when you cross a line and you say, well, we're gonna do marketing, but we'll disguise it as doing the right thing. That's a problem. Does that make sense? Am I?
Yeah, no. I think that does make sense. Yeah, and is that? I mean, even Robert, you've talked about the both hands. And do we do this just to fill up the gas tanks of some folks, or are we also offering them Christ?
This kind of fits in with that whole thing we were talking about earlier, the segment earlier where we were talking about how few Christians understand what the resurrection, what that Holy Week was all about. Mm-hmm. Frankly, there are many that go to church that really don't get it. Mm-hmm. And, when you look at your attendance during the year, and what are the 2 big attendance days? It's going to be Easter Sunday and it's going to be Christmas Sunday, whenever that falls. So that's when a whole lot of people come to the church that really don't understand, don't get the whole thing. They just know that these are special events, and so we like to go to special events. And, I know when we're doing our sunrise service that there are a lot of people there that really love Jesus, and they're out there every Easter Sunday morning for that sunrise service because this means something to them. But I also know that they often drag their kids or their neighbors, and it's just a sort of traditional thing you do on, you just go to sunrise service. And so how do you accommodate that?
Right.
I don't think you do it by giving out freebies. I mean, we do after our service, we have a breakfast at the church, but we don't give the breakfast before the service. It's after the service, and it's a blessing that we can give to those that are there. And I don't know. I'm gonna have to pray long and hard on this one to try to fit this into
But part of this is an idea of church marketing, I think, as well. We've talked about that subject before, but
Right.
And it ties in with also. We certainly have, and we empathize with those who reject denominations and traditional church happenings, and we understand what way they might be coming from, but we want them to come experience what the whole body of the church is about, and here it's a marketing effort,
But it's worse than that, Ben, because what it does is it reduces Christianity to something that we do once a year. This is their annual event, okay? And so what it's sending the message to the people is the Christians are a great place to go to. I mean, it's sending the same message. Christians are great around Christmas and Easter. No wonder people only come then, because that's when we do the Easter hay hunts, and that's when they give away the gasoline. And what we want to do as a church, we want to be more like the We Are Sikhs we just talked about. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We want to be offering gasoline every day to somebody who has a need, not once a year line up your cars and get media
Create
attention.
A traffic jam.
It's a daily walk, is what I'm saying. It's not an Easter walk.
Let me say this though, because in many I haven't been in a lot of inner city churches, and particularly in the lower echelon, economic echelon, and all of that. But I was in Philadelphia, where the ship came into Philadelphia, and I was invited to a number of inner city churches. And what amazed me on those, both black and white, but what amazed me was that the outreach into the community that many of the underprivileged churches in underprivileged areas had. They literally had a community vision. Mm-hmm. And so, I can see how this can kind of get morphed and get distorted a bit, and you go over to something like this. If you
Right.
think that one of the ways you get people to come to your community church program is by giving them stuff, but that's really not what Good Friday is all about. Good
No,
Friday
that's for
is-
next Wednesday. Stop by Chapel by the Sea, where we'll be offering free gas and scallops.
Let's see.
My Lord, honey.
Some conditions may apply. All right. Thanks for joining us again on Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240.
Thank you for joining us for Faith Matters. Email your comments, questions, and suggestions to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.